Hello, wonderful, and welcome to the podcast where you learn how to be free, even if you have a brain that wants to convince you that you don't get to be. This is for you if you know you are here and you are made for more. In this episode, we're going to be diving in to how powerful our thoughts are with concrete, hard evidence that our overthinking, critical mind that wants to be against everything. I can't just change my life with my thoughts. Well, we're going to bring some evidence forward today that is going to allow that conscious part of us that wants to hold down and say, nah, not for me, to open up on a next level, whatever level you're working at within this understanding of the work. I promise you, you are going to leave today's episode with an even more profound insight into thinking, there is more, and I get to have it, taste it, see it. What I want for us all is I want to show you the how that we get to challenge and change our thoughts, which means we get to change our entire life. So let's dive into today's episode together. Doing some research. As I always am, I'm always looking to find ways to bring my brain on board. I think where so many of us can get lost is that we expect to want this change. We expect our brains, as soon as we start it, to get on board. And we white knuckle it. We want change. You know you're here for more. You feel that seeking inside you. And so you white knuckle it. You hold on and you say to yourself, I'm going to keep going. And then the change is going to happen. But what actually happens is we white knuckle it. We go all in. We get so excited because we're like, this is it. This is the change I've been seeking. This has been the change I'm looking for. And we do it and we take the actions. And then when it doesn't happen in the time frame that our brain has decided it should be, we'll talk about shoulding in these podcast episodes together, we lose heart, we feel disappointed, and then we fall off, and this is the worst bit. And then we feel worse because we actually gave it a go. It feels worse because it's like, at least when I wasn't trying, I wasn't feeling this bad about myself because I knew why it wasn't working, why it wasn't happening. I wasn't trying, and now I'm trying and it's still not. That's devastating to our, I was going to say soul's purpose, but to our expansion and the evolution of who we're here to be and what we are here to manifest into and attract towards us. So I'm always looking for something that I call entry-level access points. Entry-level access points saved my life. Entry-level access points with little nuggets of information that I would go actively seeking to allow my brain to open up to something more a little bit. So I wasn't just white knuckling my way to try and force and shoehorn this change into my life, because that left me in the same habitual cycles that left me burning out. So when I've been doing my research for my own brain that I want to share with you, I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally scratching the surface. I've been doing this now 7 years or so. I'm still scratching the surface. I've transformed my life in ways that I can't consciously comprehend, and I'm still scratching the surface. How exciting is that new entry-level access point? The study that I found is actually harrowing, and it's not light. So be ready. And so many people are like, oh, trigger warning. But I actively and intentionally take myself into those spaces that I tried to avoid so that I wouldn't feel bad and feel triggered. It's like, if I'm triggered, there is something in there that is calling me forth. So I'm going to explore it. I'm going to go into it and I'm going to explore it. So it is intense, but it will create some actual entry-level access points for us to be able to explore. It was in a 1984 study, and it was at the clinical electrophysiology at Daphne Eye Institute in Los Angeles. And the reason, so this study that happened was because there was a big number of Cambodian women that were coming to the eye hospital with blindness, and it was an exceptionally large numbers of people from a really niche community. They couldn't understand the maths of what was happening. And the more that this clinic looked into these women, they were realizing there was this weird pattern in that the actual mechanism of the eye, they couldn't find what was wrong. There was nothing physical that was happening to the body that made sense for why these people couldn't actively and actually see. Dr. Van Bommel was doing brain scans to evaluate why there was this disconnect between the physicality of the women and what was actually happening. So during tests of their sight, they were being registered as actually blind. Dr. Van Bommel, she did brain scans of these women to try and understand what was happening, why they were losing their vision so profoundly. The studies started to come in. She teamed up with a Dr. Patricia Rosa, PhD of California State University, Long Beach, and they started to do research. And what they found was this correlation between the severity of the eyesight loss comparative with how long these women had spent under communist dictatorship and in concentration camps. And there was a direct correlation. All of these women who were losing their eyesight, literally were subjected to horrors that no human should have to endure. They all had somebody in their family die. Most of them watched that happen. And it wasn't like the most kind of torturous deaths. One of them that I read was children being thrown against a tree until they died. These women had literally seen such horrors that their brains had decided, we can't do this. We can't handle this. It's too much. And just so that we're not going to risk, this is me paraphrasing, just so that we're not going to risk any potential hazard of seeing anything close to that again, it is better to choose not to see over potentially witnessing that again, because nothing is worth seeing if there's a chance that that could come into my psyche again. There was a direct correlation between the extremities that these women had witnessed and the extremity of their blindness as they observed more and more of the functioning on a physical level. There was no reason outside of trauma. What happens is we are experiencing this world through our senses. We are experiencing this world, and the brain then computes what that means. To those people experiencing sight and allowing that to be computed through the brain literally said, we don't need that. Like, it's better that we don't. And so that was closed off from these people, even though there was no reason for it not to be physically. This is another example of the power of the mind, the power of the brain, the power of what is happening beyond our rational thought. I am pretty sure if I was to speak to any of those women, that not one of them would say, I actively and intentionally chose not to see. So many of those women, as they were interviewed, spent a lot of time in isolation, spent a lot of time wanting to be at home, wanting to be around the same people, because they felt that doing that would be a lesser of a threat. So they closed down slowly over time the parameters of their existence to such a point where then the brain took over as like, I can do this to a new extreme. Like, we don't ever have to risk seeing that again. And my journey to this work, it is not that extremity. I don't know how those people are navigating, and I don't know how effortlessly I would be able to show up in this work if I had endured something like that. Back to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning was one of the very first books that I ever read when I was coming into this work, and he spoke about the people who were able to navigate the concentration camps in the Second World War. And he said that they were people that were able to disconnect from that part of the brain that wants to just have that human response of shutting down, because the atrocities that these people endured were too much to navigate. And in my own 21st century living, which is such a far cry from that, and I'm not trying to parallel it in any way, shape, or form, so please don't hear that, but my experience has been that we are very privileged. So many of us, if you're listening to this, you're in a pretty privileged position in that we don't have wars happening directly that are influencing our direct lives right here and right now, but we still have that primitive part of the brain that is wired to be looking out for it. If we don't learn to control that, our fear heightens to such a point that we close down. I call this concept the emotional safe house. So the brain is always looking to try and keep us safe. Like the women in Cambodia, they were slowly like, oh, they were out of the concentration camps, thank God. Then they were in their own, they created their own communities and they moved together, but they would still find themselves isolating to the point of only people that they knew in and around them, only their own known environment, only their four walls, and slowly it closed into the point of they literally closed themselves in so they couldn't see anymore. We do that to some extent in this Western privileged world. We still have that part of the brain that is on high alert. And even if those atrocities are not happening to us, we have, it's almost like we flipped it on its head, an intense email. And it sounds so like, I don't want to sound disrespectful, even comparing it with the atrocities that I've started this podcast with. But if you think when you're at work and you get an email come through, you can have, I know for me, I was having this heightened state of fear and that this is dangerous and that this is something, to the point of I get an email alert and I would have a panic attack. Like we start to transfer things that aren't actually a threat to us into something because of that survival mechanism that we have going on within us. So I started to get curious about this in my own life. And the reason that I was inspired to see this and being like, my God, why am I acting like there is a nuclear threat happening on the other side of my computer because I've got an email, because I'm walking in the street and I hear somebody say, Emma, can I have a word with you? And I'm like, oh my God, like I was having this visceral response, like it was something really extreme that was happening in my world. So the women in the Cambodia camps lost their eyesight. I lost the use of my legs. And I was diagnosed with unexplained lower body paralysis. And no doctors could figure it out. Very similar to the women here, in that the doctors were looking, they were like, there's nothing physically like wrong. We don't understand what's actually happening. And I was going to all these different doctors being like, well, I can't move my lower body. I'm numb from the waist down. I literally can't move my hips. They're like fused together. What is this? Nobody had answered. And I went to one of my last doctors, and I think I would love to find him again. He was a arthritis doctor, and he checked over my body and he said to me, this isn't your body, this is your mind. And I was so mad with him. And I remember, so of course I don't remember his name. I like blocked him out. It's like, how dare you? You don't know how I'm feeling. You don't know what I'm experiencing. This is very real. But it stuck and it landed. And I started to explore, okay, well, if I'm getting no answers for what's physically wrong, what if there is more to this? What if it is something to do with something beyond what I can consciously control? Those women were not actively saying, I want to lose my eyesight. That's awful. On no level did they actively, consciously choose that. I didn't actively and consciously choose to lose the use of my lower body, but I was stuck in a freeze mode for most of my life, and I didn't even know it. That's the most terrifying thing that I found about this journey. So many of us don't actually know that we are just in this loop cycle of whatever it might be. You might be a fighter. You might be stuck in this fight response. You might be stuck in this flight response where you're always trying to flee or run away from life's problems, or you might be stuck in this freeze response. I was a combination of freeze and flight. But it manifested itself in my body as literally freezing. I couldn't move my lower body. And when I started to explore, is there more going on inside me that I don't even know? The answer was yes. And it has been the most profound journey. And the only reason that I have navigated my life to the point where I feel like I have a really good handle on my life. I feel like I'm very much in control of my brain and in control of my life. I feel like I am the navigator of this ship, and that whatever happens outside of it, I'll be able to navigate it. There are challenges, of course, and there are human experiences, of course, and sometimes these things are not simple, but in the main, I have become a master of myself. And the route that I have found to do that is by recognizing my brain has got one agenda, and it is going to focus on that agenda above and beyond everything. And that is safety. That is to bring the blinkers on and narrow my existence to such a point that I can feel like it's a feeling of, then I'll be safe, then I'll be in control, then I'll feel okay, then I'll feel better, then if this, then this will happen. And what actually happened was, I've never felt so unsafe and scared, even though I had everything around me that meant that I should have felt great. So I invite you to get curious. For so many of us, for so many people that really thrive in my work, it's the people that are the people that show up, that know what to do, that make sure that everybody else is okay, that always has a plan A, B, and C, that is organized within an inch of their life. Like, they are the doers, they are the preparers, they are the providers, they look after everybody else. But then we reach a point where it's like, I can't keep saying yes. I can't keep giving in this way. I can't keep doing in this. And most often it does manifest itself as something physical. So often the people in my world have literally been pushed to breaking point of their body saying, I can't do this anymore. So I invite you to reflect. Are you that person? Are you the go-to person that's always strong, that has all the answers, that figures everything else for everybody else all of the time? And is your body starting to send you signals that actually this way of being, this way of doing isn't as helpful as you've kind of thought it could be for a while now? Could it be that, like me, the answer doesn't actually lie in outside of navigating all of the things and putting all the pieces together out there that we think that we're meant to? What if, and this is where the entry-level access point starts, and whatever it is that you're navigating, start here. What if the answer actually was inside, those synchronicities and those experiences that don't make sense, and you're like, what? Is there more? What if you explored that deeper? What if you explored that further? What if you were like, I wonder, because I'm out here trying to fix this and trying to figure that out and trying to navigate this, and I'm not getting as far as I would like to. I've done pretty awesome. But I know there's more, and I know that I'm here for more. What if it really does come down to being able to master your thoughts, and that in mastering your thoughts, you literally change the chemistry inside your body? Just like those women had seen such atrocities that the chemistry inside the body decided, well, we're not going to use our friggin' eyes anymore because that was harrowing. What if, like my body decided, we've been in freeze mode for our whole life? What if we just freeze entirely now? I created that inside my body, and I have translated it into action and taking action and building something so much bigger than myself, because I learned to change and control my thoughts. What if we've created an entry-level access point, you and I together today, where you're opening up to, maybe I don't need to put so much emphasis out there and changing that and doing that and planning that and figuring that out. What if actually the only thing I need to do, and this is nuts, is learn to control my thoughts, which controls the chemistry inside my body, which is what creates the life that I'm here to lead. This podcast is going to be based on all the different ways that we get to explore and do that together. So I really hope you're going to join me on this journey, and I can't wait for us to dive into the next episode. So much love.